The moon is out of orbit. Will there be a Moonfall 2? When Moonfall hit theaters back on February 4th, it brought with it the kind of over-the-top sci-fi destruction only Roland Emmerich can deliver. You know, the same guy who gave us Independence Day, The Day After Tomorrow, and 2012. So naturally, when he directs a movie about the moon literally falling out of orbit and threatening to destroy Earth, people start wondering, is it going to be a Moonfall 2? It's a fair question, especially since sequels are popping up left and right these days, and the way Moonfall ends, let's just say it doesn't exactly tie everything up in a neat little bow. There's definitely room for more story. But as of now, is a sequel actually happening? Let's dig into what we know so far, and what could make Moonfall 2 not just a possibility, but a box office hit. Where Moonfall left off. Before we talk about what's next, it helps to remember where we left off. Moonfall follows astronauts Joe Fowler and Brian Harper, who team up with the wildly entertaining conspiracy theorist Casey Houseman. Their goal? Stop the moon, which has been knocked off its orbit, from crashing into Earth and wiping out life as we know it. Of course, this wouldn't be an Emmerich film without a wild twist, and there's one. Turns out, the moon isn't just a hunk of rock floating in space. It's actually a massive, artificial megastructure built by ancient humans. That revelation alone sets the stage for more stories down the line. And while they do manage to stop the disaster, the film ends on a note that feels more like a to be continued than a final goodbye. That's part of what's fueling the sequel buzz. The sequel situation, murky but hopeful. Here's where things get a bit murky. When Moonfall was still in development, Emmerich actually imagined it as the first part of a trilogy. He wanted to go big, and then go even bigger. But along the way, plans shifted. Instead of greenlighting 3 movies from the start, the team focused on just getting Moonfall made. Now, Emmerich's feelings about doing a sequel seem a little undecided. He's admitted he's not usually a fan of sequels. But if he were to make one, he said he'd want to end it with a massive cliffhanger, something bold and unexpected. He even mentioned that if it got the green light, he'd want to film Moonfall 2 and 3 back-to-back. That kind of ambition suggests he still sees potential in the story. The catch? As of right now, Moonfall 2 hasn't officially been approved by Lionsgate. What's standing in the way? Mostly money. Even though Emmerich has a reputation for making disaster movies that draw crowds, Moonfall was a $140 million independent production. That means no big studio bankrolled it, which makes financial returns even more critical. If the first one didn't make a solid profit, asking investors to pour more into 2 sequels becomes a much harder sell. Why the story deserve a sequel? Even if the box office results were mixed, the story itself leaves the door wide open for more. In fact, it practically begs for a continuation. At the end of the film, Casey sacrifices himself, kind of only to have his consciousness absorbed by the moon's AI. He wakes up in a digital sense and is told there's work to be done. That cryptic line hints that his journey isn't over, it's just getting started. And while we get some info about the moon being a giant space station made by ancient humans, there's still a bunch of unanswered questions. Where did the original creators go? What was their plan? Could Casey be tasked with helping rebuild, or even seed life on another planet? Maybe he'll help construct another megastructure moon somewhere far away in the galaxy? It's the kind of cosmic philosophical twist that could take Moonfall 2 into bigger and weirder territory. And honestly, that sounds like a good time. Who could return? If a sequel does move forward, the big question becomes, who's returning? Halle Berry and Patrick Wilson seem like easy picks to reprise their roles, especially since they made it out alive. John Bradley, Casey, could definitely return, even though his character is now basically a sentient piece of moon software, just in a slightly different way. Some characters, like Michael Peña's Tom and Eam Ickwalker's Doug, Joe's ex-husband, didn't survive the first film, so it's unlikely they'll return. But there are a few other survivors, like Charlie Plummer's Sonny, Kelly Yu's Michelle, and Carolina Barchak's Brenda, who could play larger roles in the next chapter. When can we see Moonfall 2? Let's say Moonfall 2 gets the green light soon. When can we actually expect to see it in theaters? Based on the timeline of the first film, we're probably looking at a 2-year wait minimum. Moonfall was announced in 2019, but didn't start filming until late 2020, and it took more than a year to finish post-production. If the sequel followed a similar path, we could be looking at a 2026 release, maybe spring or summer, maybe fall at the latest. That's assuming the script is written quickly, filming goes smoothly, and post-production doesn't hit any snags. How to make Moonfall 2 a hit. Even though it's not happening yet, it's not totally off the table either. But if they do go ahead with a sequel, one way to really boost its chances at the box office would be to bring in new star power. The first movie already had big names like Halle Berry and Patrick Wilson. But if Emmerich wants to go full blockbuster mode for round 2, why not add some fresh A-listers? Imagine someone like Chris Hemsworth or Emily Blunt stepping in as a scientist or space explorer. Or maybe Keanu Reeves shows up as a mysterious survivor from another megastructure moon. Okay, that's a stretch, but you get the idea. Even adding a few younger, buzzy stars could help. Think of someone like Zendaya or Timothée Chalamet. Not just because they're popular, but because they've shown they can hold their own in sci-fi. A mix of returning cast and fresh faces could be the perfect combo to make Moonfall 2 feel both familiar and new. Beyond just casting, a bigger ensemble gives the story more room to play. More perspectives, more character arcs, and more high-stakes space drama. Final thoughts. So what does that leave us? Honestly, not everything is set in stone, but there's reason to stay optimistic. Roland Emmerich's films have collectively earned nearly $4 billion worldwide. That's no small feat, even though he's had some misses. Audiences generally know what to expect from his movies. Big explosions, wild ideas, and a lot of popcorn-worthy fun. Plus, there's been early excitement around the concept of Moonfall. And while the first one didn't dominate the box office, it did build a cult following of people who love a good disaster movie with a twist. If that enthusiasm carries over, it could be enough to justify a sequel, especially if they go bigger, bolder, and bring in more talent. For now, the best way fans can support the idea of a Moonfall sequel is to keep watching the first one, whether that's in theaters, on streaming, or on demand. The more people talk about it, the more likely it is that studios will take notice. So while nothing's confirmed just yet, don't count this one out. Because when the moon itself turns out to be a giant alien structure, you can bet there's a lot more story left to tell. And honestly, we'd like to see what happens next.